2, 1. Oh! Ho, 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 ho! Merry Christmas, everybody! 2 weeks in advance, but you got to get your shopping in early. Welcome, everyone, to the F1 Failcast Crimbo edition. With myself, Mr. Valkenberg, and alongside me, wearing his festivities on his sleeve, Mr. Definitely Zero. How you doing?
Have you been a good boy this year?
Oh.
I know I have. I've got my Red Bull Simple Cola.
Hey.
Well, Ainsley, it's great to be here in the Green Kitchen this week. I will be mostly cooking my own tyres because we're in France. I hope you like the taste of burnt and melted rubber.
Nom nom nom. To be fair, that describes most of my love life, so works quite well.
The boy's got stamina.
Even if he's not got pace. But yeah.
We're off to a cracker. This is going better than I could possibly have imagined.
Yes, indeed. So we, in typical Failcast fashion, we did have an idea for Christmas, very, very randomly given to us by...
Beetlejuice.
It was Beetlejuice, wasn't it? Yeah. And it was to do some Project Cars. We went away and had a look at Project Cars and realised how terrible we are. And although we're Failcast, we're not fucking Failcast. So...
yeah, the failure has to be within certain parameters of good taste. I think I really love the game, and I enjoy it, and I wish I'd put more hours into it. I mean, it's the kind of game I should be playing, really, but I really do feel I need a wheel for it.
Yes.
Because the fine control, I was dabbling with. I had an endurance week on Instagram. Although every week is arguably an endurance week on Instagram when it's full of people's arses and what they've had for breakfast. But this was a different kind of endurance, and I was trying the game's LMP3 category initially with one of the more mild-mannered Ligier cars, and then I gradually worked up the Ligier chain, then tried the Bentley Speed 8, and it got to a point where I could vaguely keep it on the track, but there was just no pace there at all, and any fine control, like the analog stick, is just no good for it. You need a wheel. So rather than us swearing and crashing into a barrier, which you see anyway, let's be honest, we thought we'd bash out a regular episode, and we'll try and think of something maybe for the new year where we can spice things up a little. Now, in the championship, I have crept up to 10 points ahead of you, sir, but who even knows what's going to happen here, because we both have very serious trouble with tyre core temperature, and I'm hoping to offset it by running on harder tyres, but I know that's going to have such a huge pace detriment that I don't know if it's going to make any difference, really.
Yeah. I'm going to go back into my... Now that I've ran this race in career mode and watched me fail miserably, I think I finished 17th. It was not great. But I can't drive I struggle with the track anyway, because none of the apexes are where I feel they should be on these corners at all. It feels like such a weird and random track. But yeah, I'm going to be lowering my... tyre pressure as well from whatever I had before, because apparently that does seem to help with tyre temperature a little bit. So I'll take
it. Also improves grip, but it
slow down the straight.
It will make you slower, apparently. Who even knows? But I might try the same thing, because I did a few laps this morning and I was already getting the tyres up to like 98 degrees in 2-3 laps. So, and that was on the hardest compound available. So maybe it's best to let some of the air out. What we won't be letting the air out of is ourselves or your hopes and dreams. So how about we dive into quali and we can find something to complain about? There's plenty to choose from.
Absolutely. And I guess if we should talk about some F1-y bits beforehand, and we're bitching about a circuit that, just because it's just brought it up, that chicane, the psychedelic chicane on my screen of pieces of track that should never have really existed in the real world. Do you know what, actually? I'm going to go for a harder tyre allocation.
Yeah, I'm doing the same.
Wow.
No imagination, that's our trouble.
No.
So, I actually thought this track, when I saw it on TV, actually looked quite good.
Yeah.
Like from the trackside cameras and the crane cameras and the Crofty copter, they looked pretty good. But I don't think it really gave, until I tried it in game myself, I don't think I realised just how invisible where you're supposed to be is. And I don't know what maniac designed this track, but I mean, they are unhinged. They shouldn't be allowed out in public. It's very dangerous.
Oh, it goes dry to wet in our race as well.
Oh, lame. Then I will pick the setup that, for whatever reason, I have marked as stable.
Is it your Brexit strategy?
Yeah. It's a strong and stable setup. You can have an aggressive setup with Jeremy Corbyn, or you can have a stable setup with me.
Okay, I've clonked down my tyre pressures to 22.2 and 20.7 because they were slap bang in the middle.
Oh, you've got taken quite a lot of front tyre pressure out by doing that.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I don't know. It just means we were running very different setups to begin with.
Ah, okay. This could be interesting.
Right. Well, maybe I've just ruined the balance of my setup. Let's go on track and find out.
Yay!
While we're talking about the game, actually, I want to run something past you. I'm finding that in every season, when I get to Bahrain, I can't. Something is wrong. I always was traditionally very good at Bahrain, but in this game, particularly during the practices, and I don't know if it's a bug. I wanted to ask how you got on, but I get through the first corner, and then T2, I lose like half a second, and I don't know why. Like nothing's happening. I'm not breaking traction. Just time evaporates, and all the way around, it feels like the car is too slow, but I don't feel slow, and I qualify well. It's really, really odd.
So is it just in the practices that does that, and then you're like fine for the other sessions, or?
Yeah. I'm off the pace massively in practice against what my target is.
That's strange. I have to say I've not.
I think Jeff just hates me.
What's he said?
No, I like with my Bahrain. I think Jeff just hates me and sets me challenging targets that cannot possibly be met.
I've noticed actually that with all of the different changes and stuff that have come in, they've made some of the practice session targets much more difficult, particularly around tyre wear for me, and less so much around the fuel, but the ERS one. They've made a little bit more difficult because I used to be able to like flummox it by changing the fuel as well as the ERS, and now you can't. So
yeah, they disabled the fuel control. I noticed that.
Yeah.
I actually changed teams and found it even more unsettling to my pace than I have in any previous iteration of the game. Which is something I noticed because I moved to Renault because I wanted a teammate that was about on my pace, and what I found was that consistently me and Hulkenberg were fighting with each other on track and in qualifying. The problem is now we're in equal cars, even though on paper the Sauber was better than the Renault by the end of my first season.
Yep.
I'm now whipping I'm now whipping Hulkenberg like so many public schoolboy bottoms in the shower, and I can't account for it. But the car, I feel way slower than I did in the Sauber. Like the car, it just handles totally differently. I hated it initially. I've just kind of got my eye in now. But props to Codemasters, because that's the experience you should have. Like changing teams should be a big deal. Completely
agree. I have noticed. So I last night was doing my Belgian Grand Prix, and during a dry, wet, dry race. All of the AI pitted either 6 or 7 times for tyres, and I only pitted 2. Hence I won. But that's the first time I've come across that, where Jeff was going, it's going to get extra wet, and then it was going to dry out in 5... it was going to go back to inters again 5 minutes later. So everyone came in because clearly their AI had gone, ooh, we need to change onto wet tyres. But because it was then only 5 minutes to go, they all came in and re-put back on inters, then came in the next lap and put on wets, only for 4 minutes later to come back in onto inters. And then they done the same thing because it was 5 again to dry. So then when it came time to put on dries, they just came in and put back on inters again. And I was like, okay.
I had the exact opposite problem, but I also won Belgium in a Sauber. What happened for me was that it was a wet throughout Grand Prix, and we were all on inters, and it was odd because I'm doing 100% in my career mode, but it told me that my tyres could last the full Grand Prix.
Oh, wow.
But they couldn't. And when I came into pit, I worried I'd pitted too early, but the other cars just stayed out forever, and I got immediately vastly faster than all of them, and they just stayed out the full race without pitting, which is against the rules. None of them pitted. It was I've never seen anything like it. I won by something like 15 seconds.
Wow.
But Sauber represent.
Yes. Love it.
I also want to comment that I hate the pit entrance of this circuit.
Yeah.
I despise it. It's stupidly designed. It's very hard to enter without smashing yourself to death. And I imagine it will cause problems in our race, as it did in my race, with cars piling up and blocking it.
Wonderful. You can always tell when it's a new track, even if you don't follow F1, because the AI lines and stuff haven't quite been perfected properly yet.
So, on to the real world, and I think we both want to take a moment of recognition for someone who's passed away recently from F1 minnow history. Now, the younger among you won't remember Onyx Grand Prix, but I know Simon and I both remember them quite fondly.
Yes.
Very colourful cars, and unfortunately Jean-Pierre Van Rossum has died aged 73. He owned the Moneytron investment company and backed Onyx basically from Formula 3000 through to Formula 1. The team didn't really flourish, as it were, but they did have a very stylish pink and purple and white livery for a while, which I was a big fan of.
Yes.
And it's just sad. And it comes at a time actually where F1 themselves, but also a lot in the F1 press, have been saying that we need to have the beloved minnow team back.
Hurrah.
There needs to be a space for it in the sport. And I don't know if you saw this in the news.
Yes, I did.
But now it's been mandated by Formula 1 that engine suppliers have to share their technology with incoming engine suppliers after it was revealed that Cosworth, Porsche and Aston Martin have all pulled out from potentially providing power units in 2021. They've all withdrawn interest. So we are not getting, at the moment at least, any new engine suppliers for 2021, which is a real kick in the pants for Red Bull, and a huge kick in the pants for McLaren, I suspect, who are in, let's just say, dire straits, and being a Renault customer doesn't help, to the point that, given that they've forgotten how to make racing cars, they've now gone into mobile phones and released a mobile phone this week.
And cycling.
Yes, which is all Fernando Alonso's doing. But I have to say, the McLaren phone does actually look really good.
Well, they do sell their electronics all over the place, and they seem to be working quite well. It's just I don't expect the phone to aerodynamically fit well into my pocket. That's the problem.
It's a GP2 phone, that's what I've heard. No, I mean, what I kind of liked about it was I did see a video demonstrating it's tied up with McLaren because of a speed element, so it's got like 10 gig of RAM, so it is very, very fast. But it's rapid charging as well, so it's got a pretty huge battery that should last all day anyway. But apparently you can charge it to just over 50%, like 52% in 20 minutes.
Okay.
So I guess that's why they tied up with McLaren, because it's a speedy brand and it's a speedy phone. But I kind of like the look of it, carbon fibre style back and like the orange tint down the bottom. I just wish their car looked as good as their phone. Now we are pinballing all over the place, I realise, because we've gone from the death of Jean-Pierre Van Rossum, immediately to the death of the Minnow team in Formula One, to engine suppliers pulling out and McLaren building a phone. But I promise you that there is a reason for this, because I wanted to segue into something that we missed earlier.
Okay.
The McLaren livery at the last Grand Prix of the season, where the fuck was that car the rest of the year? Because that's all I wanted. Like, something to break up that huge big block of orange that I thought looked horrible.
Yeah, I really liked the way how that Alonso's hometown flag was used. I thought that was proper cool. Enjoyed. Would do again, essentially. Yeah, so... What was I going to say? There was something else I was going to say. Don't mind me.
I just don't get why... You know, they've gradually improved the livery over the year. But then that one they had for the last Grand Prix, it looks so much better than what they've been running around in. Like, I just don't know why... I mean, to be fair, the livery is the least of McLaren's problems right now, but I just don't understand why that wasn't out there, you know. I mean, I'm not suggesting for a second that they sit in technical meetings poring over the mountains of reports and all these aerodynamic problems that they've discovered, and I don't want someone to put their hand up and seriously go, do you think it'd help if we painted it a different colour? Because obviously it wouldn't, although we all know red is the fastest colour, scientific. But let's backtrack a little bit onto my bizarre stream of consciousness that burst out there.
Okay.
And talk about the Minnow team. Do you actually think, first of all, that this change in regulations will actually encourage new engine suppliers?
No. In a word.
It's quite a brief answer. Would you like to qualify?
No.
I refuse.
I was too busy eyeing up my ever-decreasing tin of Roses chocolates that were supposed to be for Christmas. So I don't think it does, because unless... I think no one will do anything until Honda is treated with respect and is able to show that they're competitive. I genuinely think that Honda's 4 years of shite at the back of the field, struggling around trying to work out how they go racing and do business, has been just as much of a problem, because they're successful everywhere else, and it shows that actually you can't just like wander in and be successful here. And whilst to me it doesn't quite equate to the same as like buying parts of the car like a Haas model. You still have to be able to work in symbiosis with the team and everything else, and surely if you are building something that then has to revolve around other people's technology, for example, does that not then also mean that you're effectively hemming yourself into their design philosophy and therefore not really making your own engine? I don't know. I'm not technical enough to know.
I've got a feeling actually that rather than encouraging new engine suppliers, I mean, because it might do actually, right? Because if you think about it, say you were, I don't know, Ford, for example, who are really lacking behind actually in terms of electronic vehicles and a hybrid powertrain, right? They don't seem to, because the market's America and gas is still cheap there, and you know they just. But eventually they're going to have to do something, right? Theoretically, because Formula One and Formula E have been kind of the proving grounds, right? That's why manufacturers enter motorsport. It's not just to improve their brand image. It's mostly about developing technology. You could now walk into Formula One technically and have the expensive part of the work done for you. And you could then piggyback on brands like Mercedes and Ferrari and Renault and Honda, who've already made these huge investments to come up with their own concepts, and just take the technology. Now, obviously, you still have to put it into some workable form for your consumer product, but the fact is, like, the bulk of the R&D heavy lifting has been done, and then you just iterate upon it. But I agree with you. I don't think it's going to bring anybody new in. And what I find really worrying is that we're at a point now where you could buy something like 46 to 50% of your car off the shelf from somebody else. You can buy your powertrain, customer, including your gearbox. Because, do you remember the days it used to be that your gearbox always had to be your own?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like every team produced their own gearboxes, and it's only like in the 2010s really that it became really popular to either have a gearbox produced by your power unit manufacturer or buy one from another team. You know, like Williams were selling gearboxes for a while until they forgot how to make cars, and then they started buying gearboxes. But my point is, we've already made it so that you can half run a Formula One team, and we're just not getting the interest.
No. So clearly, to me, that kind of then also says that are you not starting to bark up the wrong tree in terms of because where is the point to come in as a manufacturer and say, look at what we've done, when you've bought most of it yourself? So therefore, it's not really your own thing. What branding exercise do you get out of that, if that makes sense? Because if you don't technically own any of it, then you're saying, oh, we've worked in partnership with, or we've bought out of. And then if, say, I don't know, I'm not very good at like which car manufacturer hates each other, but you could end up with like it becomes an impossible partnership to then like have, because if you're then actually, it'd be like Toyota and Honda having one buying someone else's internals and then rebranding it externally. It just wouldn't happen. So then that's like one thing off the shelf. So then you'd be like, right, do we have a Mercedes Toyota package or something like that? It's just, you wouldn't do it as a branding exercise because you can't then sell the vehicle and then sell it off as your own afterwards.
No, I agree. And and the thing is, you know, what they're saying is they're trying to, with these regulations, they're trying to encourage independent entries. But that isn't happening either. And, I mean, partly that's because F1 is just so much more expensive now than it was in the 90s, when we did have a big grid full of independent teams. But it's true that you just no longer have these sort of quite eccentric, mad, rich individuals who decide to found Formula One teams, because it's been increasingly proven that they tend to be a poor investment.
Yeah, I think the probably the only person I can think of who might be mad enough and ridiculous enough to do it is the bearded wonder that is this energy drink guy that's gone into Haas. He's about as close to something like that as I could see happening, but then I guess you actually have to have some money and not pretend thoughts and feelings to get in.
Yeah, I mean the thing is, I still can't make my mind up about him. Let's talk about Rich Energy for a little bit, actually, because obviously Haas felt confident tying up with them, and I've since found out that they do seem to do quite a lot of motorsport sponsorships and sports sponsorships. So there's a lot of athletes and drivers out there with like Rich Energy on their car or on their overalls or whatever. I just don't know where the company gets its money from.
No.
I really don't get it. Because, I mean, let's be totally frank here. You can't go up against Red Bull if you're not being sold in the shops. You have to order from their website, or they're sold in a few luxury health clubs and hotels. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me to make an investment like Formula One. And I'm pleased, at least, that they're coming in only as a sponsor at this point, and they're not still under the delusion that they could run a team. I mean, I don't know how he expected to be able to pull that off. Then again, you know, maybe he could have done. The whole world of like international finance baffles me. It absolutely baffles me. I actually, as part of my job, I work at a publicly listed company that shall remain nameless, and they gave us like a lecture, basically, to explain how the flotation works and why they did it the way they did, and so on and so forth. And, you know, explaining how the share price is decided and so on.
Yeah.
And basically what they said was that, and this is coming from a lawyer and an investment banker, they said, well, basically, like, your job to some extent is to totally overvalue the business and overpromise at an early stage, and then once you've got the money and the value is actually truly revealed, then you start to lowball, so you're giving your investors a nice surprise instead of a bad one. And I'm thinking, okay, but why do people keep falling for this then, if it's universally known? Like, our
isn't that
the value
when a
of our
crash
company...
Isn't that when a crash happens? Is when everyone stops believing the shit, and then no one trades, and then everything's a stalemate. Or have I kind of missed that out as a?
No. I mean, you're kind of right. I mean, they also explain short selling, which still blows my mind how that's legal. I know there's restrictions on it, but short selling, right, is like normally we would sell something to each other, right? So I'd sell you shares in a company, and you buy them from me.
Okay.
Right? And I say €10 for these shares, and you say, here's €10, and I say, thank you very much, here's the shares, right?
Right.
But maybe they're on the market for €10, and I say to you, well, I'll sell them to you for €8. But I don't have the shares. I'm selling you something I don't own, and I'm hoping that the shares drop to €8 or below €8, so I can sell them to you for €8. And apparently, like, this happens all the time.
Oh, no wonder lives are ruined.
So after sitting through that, I thought, well, no wonder nobody's investing in Formula One.
Yeah.
It's very hard as an independent racing team to monetize what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think it can be done, but you have to be realistic about it. Like, I think I've said before, there genuinely is a place, I think, in Formula One for someone to responsibly and within their means run a minnow team, a genuine minnow team, one that's fighting around the back, maybe trying to get off the back of the grid, but ultimately their job is to assign seats to drivers on merit, and those drivers should have backing from bigger teams. So it's a place to put someone like Ocon, for example, at the moment, because it's cheaper than all these manufacturers having their own junior teams, and it enables you to run somewhat profitably, because paying you 10 million to put a driver in a seat is cheaper than spending, the minimum of roughly 40 million a season to have a junior team. And through other tie-ups and arrangements and so on, I think it could be done. You just have to accept that the team is not going to ever be fighting for the championship. I mean, obviously that goes against everyone's instinct as racers, but I think that's the world we're in now.
But I don't see that as being a bad thing. It's like, did Minardi ever think that they were ever going to win anything? That was there for the pure love of racing. Were able to put together something competent on the budget that they had, and knew their place, know your place, and just kind of got on with it and done the best with what they had. And I don't see that as being a bad thing, because I remember, like, this conversation about minnows has been going on for a very long time, in how I remember when Prost and Arrows were coming off the back of the grid, and then it was the big thing back in when Jordan sold out, Minardi went to Toro Rosso, Jaguar had gone, and then Red Bull was coming as well, and it was like, right, these teams all go, who then becomes the back? And at that time it was like what happens if everyone keeps on being consumed? At some point the people at the front will end up at the back, and now lo and behold, 2018, who are our back markers? McLaren and Williams. And if you'd have said that 20 years ago, you'd have probably been laughed off the face of the earth. But now those front-running teams are the back markers. It then becomes like a cyclic thing of, oh, well, we can't invest in them, blah, 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 blah. If there's going to be, not that you want it to be manufactured, oh, an old farmer then, to be like a front-runner team all the time.
Manufactured?
Who are? Get my cows. I just, like, there is nothing wrong with being the minnow that is your place, that is what you do, that is what makes sense, so that you can keep those front runners kind of like well invested, I guess. But there does need to be like a proper tie-up, in the same way that you've almost got like Formula 1 and then Formula 1.5 at the moment. If you had, not that I'd want this, but if there was like 6 teams running in the top lot instead of it just being free, and then there was another 6 teams like underneath, and then like a couple at the back, a bit like in 2010, I don't see why that's horrible, because in some situations you'll still get some upsets. You'd get a nice chunky grid, I don't know.
I don't know. I kind of can't join you on that boat trip, to be honest, because I do think every team should be seriously competing, and I do think actually, for their sins, Minardi were serious about their racing. I think they were also honest about the possibilities of any one season, but I mean, consistently for a long time they resisted taking pay drivers, and they were very consistent at building very competent and competitive chassis that were always just chronically underpowered. I mean, the power unit was continually the weakest part of any Minardi package, and it was at a time where manufacturer involvement was so key to a team's success that, you know, running Ford HB engines up against Cosworth engines and, you know, even the Z-Tech units, it was just such a massive disadvantage. Oh, that was a super slow lap. Let's try that again.
I think so. I have nothing wrong with like. I completely agree. Everyone needs to be able to compete and so on and so forth. But it feels to me like I'm trying to let you go. Sorry. It feels to me like if you're only coming in to win it and consider like being seventh a horrific sin to humanity. I don't know. I feel like you need to kind of reevaluate your priorities. And you talking about the Ford engines and stuff like that, that's probably one of the reasons why Ford would not touch it with a barge pole, was because someone has to prop up that back end of the grid. And all they were doing was renting out old units for way more money than what sometimes the manufacturers were giving out like their top brands for, because they could. But they were doing it in a way because basically they're saying this is terrible PR for us because we're just propping up the back of the grid. And they didn't want to put in the money for the investment, but they'll take the money for the hit of the PR. So it's a difficult situation, I guess. I think there's something in it for me to have almost like an F1 junior team that doesn't need to, that is supported to some degree by like buying parts, a bit like the Haas model, at the back of the field, that's allowed to basically validate career ladder progression, so that if we ever get in a state where the Formula 2 winners don't ever actually get a seat or something like that, then there's somewhere for them to go and race, even if it's not necessarily at the back. And that might kind of stop people having the fear of being last. I don't know. I might be talking bollocks. Oh, hello.
All right, well, hello. I tell you what, why don't you and I, right now, put together a business plan for a Formula 1 team? I think that could be a quite interesting prospect.
Here comes the Failcast down the straight. Very slowly.
No, for reals, right? Because, I mean, the problem you have, I suppose, mainly, let's just assume for a second that all you need to do is scrape together some startup capital and enough funding for your first season, right?
Yeah.
You're probably still talking the best part of 100 million, just because you need to build a factory and equip it, and you need to pay the people. It's going to be a lot. But after that, you know, you could run on, you know, whatever Force India's been running on, you know, 35, 40 million. Yeah. So, I mean, they've proven it can be done. But even if you can't reach that, where does if you're not interesting from a technology standpoint to a manufacturer, and you're not there to make your money through winnings from the FIA, then really you're left with driver funding and sponsorship. And I do wonder if the long-term success of such a team would be best served by negotiating for a power unit and gearbox supply from one manufacturer in exchange for one of the seats, and then money for the secondary seat, or if you take the Minardi model of hiring any old driver just based on who you believe will do the best job, on the proviso that they bring some money, of course, and that they sign over a percentage of future earnings in Formula 1.
I like the signing over of future earnings, because that reminds me of what didn't Justin Wilson go for that route?
I believe he did, and you know,
it was
something
shares,
that's actually it's quite common in football as well. Like sometimes when kids get taken into football teams, then it can be that the team that discovered you and sort of put you through your youth program, they will get a cut of all your future transfer fees, and you know, maybe they'll get a cut of your earnings.
Okay, well that sounds.
I just
decent.
sort of think you have to. I'm sure it's possible to put together some kind of sustainable model that keeps the team on the grid for many years, just within a responsibly managed budget and with revenue coming in from sustainable sources.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to make it through.
Organic GP.
I'm not going to make it through.
You can do it.
No, I'm already 7/10ths down on my original lap time, and that's only good enough for 15th. Where are you?
I am currently 5th.
Right,
and I'm not
hopefully
going out again.
Hopefully I've got time to get... Oh, I've got 4 minutes here left yet. I can get round for another lap.
Yeah, you've got plenty.
It's going to batter my tyres, unfortunately.
I'm running out of Kerrs coming on to the final corner as well. So
yeah, it's super mean, isn't it? Oh, I've just realised I'm running very heavy with fuel, which doesn't help. I've got 10 laps of fuel in the car for some reason.
I did as well, and I don't understand why. Very strange.
But yeah, and then you know you follow the horse model. You buy your components off the shelf as best you can. You know, you don't even have to produce everything. You just meet the minimum definition of a constructor if that's the rules that the sport wants to play by. At least you're honest about it.
Yeah,
you know, you're not having ideas of grandeur.
Call it organic Grand Prix for our sustainable wealth.
Alright. I've lost a bit of time there putting everything back up to maximum, but let's try not to fuck this corner now. No, I'm already a 10th down. I don't know how I took that corner first time round, but it was a lot better than I have been doing.
I'm so wildly erratic on this track. Every corner feels unnatural to me.
It's an abomination, isn't it? I stand by what I said, that I think it looks great on TV.
Yeah, but it's so unsatisfying to drive.
Yeah, you don't get into a rhythm either. Like everything just feels sloppy and mushed together like a toddler's breakfast.
It's interesting because like Manicourt never had any overtaking on, but at least there's a proper like chicane rhythm to that track, and you get into the flow of it. Whereas here, it's like whoever. You can tell that it's like, I'll have a corner to try out this part of the car and a corner to try out this part of the car, because it is a proper testing track as opposed to a racing track. Yeah, I guess...
Very true. I wonder why they picked it rather than Magny-Cours. I mean, I know Bernie hated Magny-Cours because it was like a toilet, but it was a good track. It was just the facilities were garbage.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's easy. Because it wasn't even like easier to get to, I don't think. 6th, you're in. By quite a way as well, actually. 6/10.
I wasn't fast enough to match you, though.
Middle sector, I have the fastest one, but you beat me on the others.
You must have had a hell of a middle sector.
Yeah, and maybe that's difference in wings, maybe.
Oh god, also I've just realised we're going to be starting on some very scuffed up ultras, and yeah, the temperatures are climbing. I'm gonna go for an early pit stop in this Grand Prix and get off these ultras very, very quickly, because I don't think the pace advantage is enough to offset the overheating pace loss.
Not at all. I'll be getting off those ultras as soon as I can as well. So to kind of cycle back in a whole 180 degrees, just to round off on the fact that the Onyx Monteverdi guy had passed away, Onyx, of course, did get a podium with Stefan Johansson in, I'm going to say, Imola 1989, because it was such a random thing, and then they did not qualify for like the next round. Because it was one of those Imola races where everyone was like, nope, I'll run out of fuel, because Imola was notoriously terrible.
Yeah.
I can't remember if he finished third or he was running third and retired. It might have been that, to be fair. My F1 knowledge goes a bit wonky. But it was that race where everyone ran out of fuel, and he was running at least at third at some point. And he also fielded JJ Leto, of course, who went on to Dallara and Benetton fame.
And Sauber for a bit, wasn't he?
Yeah, Sauber too. And Gregor Wojtek, who drove for all of the backmarker teams at some point across his like 5 Grand Prix.
I miss drivers like that though. You don't get them anymore.
No.
I think it's because there's less seats on the grid, right? So, like, you're more likely to cycle out of the sport than to another team, statistically speaking. Because, you know, the really established drivers, I mean, they stay in forever. I mean, if you look up and down the grid now, how many people came in the last 5 years?
And
very few.
And you're already affiliated through a junior program to a certain team, so it's very difficult to then break out of that cycle. I guess as well. Maybe the last person that was vaguely like that maybe was Adrian Sutil, but that was generally he Force India and all of their guises, I guess, all of the way through, and then a bit of Sauber at the end.
For a laugh.
For a lull. I'm shocked I'm in Q3. I'm terrible at this track.
We found a cheeky little bit of pace, but I mean, the problem is, don't you? It's 1 lap pace. That means we're going to both be going backwards through the entire Grand Prix.
Indeed. Well, I've had to turn back because I can't remember how to do this track properly. Or get out quick because it's going to rain.
Thank you for the heads up.
What was I going to say? I've had to turn back on the racing line for corners because I genuinely just can't remember where to brake. That's how much I've blocked this track out of my memory. I never have to do that. Oh, you keep disappearing and re-emerging from the pits twice. I love it.
Ooh.
Spooky.
Oh, they held me in. I thought I saw you go out ahead of me. Must have been a ghost.
You're ahead of me.
Ghost, Simon. No, I am ahead of you now, but I thought I saw your car like as one of the first on track. Right, I'm going to be going very slowly, I'll warn you, because I want to keep my tyres cool. Same. And I want to stop my ERS from draining. No sirens today, but there is a Turkish wedding outside, and they obnoxiously beep their horns. Yeah, all the time. I don't know why they do it. I really don't. And I know it's culturally insensitive, but, fuck off and shut up. It's really annoying. They just drive around in these... the cars are all painted white, and they all have expensive cars,
of course.
Which, is nice if you can get it, but they drive around town beeping and speeding. It's a really bizarre, cultural thing.
What an intro.
But it's also incredibly irritating and vulgar.
Yeah.
It just is, because I live on a main street, so half my day is spent listening to emergency sirens and the other half is spent listening to Turkish weddings.
At least a siren has 2 tones.
Exactly. You're right though, it does look like the weather is on the wobble. Well, that puts the pressure up because it means I feel like I've only got 1 shot at this really, because the tyres go off so quickly.
We've got 2 shots if you come straight in and go back out, because it was rain at the 10 minutes rather than at the 5. So we might be able to do a quick cheeky.
I lose so much time putting all my dials back up. But I don't like doing it in the corners.
Mm-hmm.
The car understeers a little bit as well, I find. Maybe that's what's happened with the tyre pressures.
Oh, Christ. That's not how you take turn 1 or 2. This will not
Well,
be
at least
fun.
it's really hard for us to crash here, in theory.
Don't set me a challenge for Christmas. As NC Gamer Boy said to me last night when we was going to the grid, he was like, "Are you going to do the Spa no stop challenge?" I was like, "Nope." But it seems like your AI did it instead. So there we go.
They did. I don't know how that's possible. I really don't. The tyres should have exploded, but apparently the AI don't have to play by the same rules as everyone else. It's one rule for them, one rule for the rest of us.
I spun. Never mind. We'll go again. Coming out of the chicane. Done a little half spin. Got on the power a bit too aggressive. Alright, let's...
I've had a very sloppy lap. I don't think I'm going to put in a good time.
Okay.
I spent too much time on the curbs as well, and that really kills your lap time.
So, if you was to run your own minnow team, which drivers would you like to have in it? Like current now.
That is an excellent question. Well, that was a horrible lap then. Well, the question really becomes, what are my limitations? Is this a, like, pay driver is required, or, I mean, are we following my business plan, basically?
We are following your business plan, so you need to have, like, a pay driver / manufacturer-y one, and maybe one who can bring in the bacon. Oh, here comes the rain.
I found a little bit of pace, so I'm staying out, even though I didn't initially intend to finish this lap.
No, do it, because it's going to be wet now.
So, I think that I would accept assuming that they went for the idea, a Honda Junior Team role.
Ooh.
Although you could argue whether they'd actually accept that, given that they've got Red Bull and Toro Rosso now. But I actually think Honda will begin making pretty good progress, and that then opens up a funding channel by bringing a Japanese driver in to the sport, potentially. Oh, I've balls this lap. I was like 4/10 up, and now like it's all gone to tits.
Well, Nobuharu Matsushita, I think, is back in Formula 2 next year, so he could be a worthwhile one. Or Tadasuke Makino.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And do you know what? People tease you a little bit for your fondness for Artem Markelov.
Yes.
But I watched the F2 highlights of the season video, and like 4 of the top 10 overtakes were him, and they were all amazing.
Yes.
They really were. So, maybe get some of the Russian Spondulis by bringing him in. But also there's so many others, like if it didn't hinge on backing, then I'd definitely like to give Felix Rosenqvist a shot in Formula 1.
Ooh.
Because I think he's definitely capable of it. Yeah, this is the best I can do, so I'm starting 10th if you improve, which it looks like you are, because you're like...
No, I'm already 8 seconds off on this lap.
Ooh. Looking at my pace before I messed it up, though, the best I could have hoped for was 7th, so it's not like I've lost that much, really.
No. Peaked too soon.
But yeah, who else? It's a really good question, actually. It is a really good question, because I do kind of find myself thinking that particularly Rosenqvist I'd like to see given a shot in Formula 1. But also there's that young IndyCar driver that is a really big deal. God, what's his name?
Which one?
A young American guy.
So not Rossi.
No, not Rossi. I think he's. Oh God, it's gonna drive me mad the rest of the episode. Right, well, let's just pretend he doesn't exist. We'll forget about him.
Okay.
I think if I didn't have to have the money, then I'd definitely bring Rosenqvist in. If I did have to have the money, then I'd certainly explore the Honda route. Failing that, I think you could arguably knock on Renault's door, simply because they're down now to supplying only one other team.
Yeah.
And McLaren don't seem to be anything more than a genuine customer rather than any kind of partner. And so perhaps if you were to make a seat open for a Renault Junior driver, and there are quite a few Renault Juniors kicking around now, then I do think potentially there's a door open there. Certainly, I'd do everything I could to avoid paying for the powertrain. And if no one took me up on that offer and I had to fund them myself, then I'd definitely. I think I'm surprised to hear myself say this because there's a lot of really great drivers in Formula 2, but that montage of Markelov really did impress me, actually. It's often the case that someone who doesn't win one championship actually excels in other areas. I mean, there have been plenty of very, very capable and competent Formula 1 drivers who have not won much at junior formulae. And there have been plenty of people who've won junior formulae championships and gone on to suck. Ricardo Rosset. Excuse me.
I beg you. I bless you.
we'll bleep that out. But yeah, he who shall not be named is definitely one of them because he kicked arse in Formula 3000, but then went on to fail so badly that famously the Tyrrell mechanics moved around the letters in his name sticker on his car, moving the first and last letters around, so his name went from Rosset to Tosser. Which I enjoyed massively when I heard about it.
That's such a British thing to do. I'm so proud.
I think, though, I mean, do you think realistically we're pining for a time that's never coming back?
Yes, to an extent. I think in this current climate, yes. I do think that I don't know. I'll give it maybe another 10 years or so because yes, things will need to be professional, but I also think that there's a need to have more than 20 cars on the grid just for stability purposes. So maybe that might give stuff up. I'm happy to have a grid that's larger and closer together and everyone has a chance, but I don't mind there being a hierarchy, I guess. If I was to bring in two drivers, I know the two that I'd bring in. One of them is purely by name, but I actually think he's a good driver as well, and that would be Louis Delatraz.
Oh no, definitely. He's been really impressing me, actually.
My Twitter bud, and now Instagram bud. We now follow each other as well. Very bizarre. And I've found that Jean-Denis Delatraz is also on Instagram, so I now follow him. And he liked some of my messages, so that's as close to backmark of fame as I will ever get. So yeah, super impressed with him. I think he's done very, very well, and now he's had his Haas test as well, so he's proven that he can drive one of those cars. And then I feel like we need a Brazilian back on the grid, so I would go for Sergio Sete Câmara in my second drive.
That is a left field choice. You know what you've reminded me of, though, while you were saying that? Jean Alesi's son.
Oh, Julian Alesi. Giuliano.
Yeah.
The Sunday
Giuliano
specialist.
Alesi.
Well, he's stepping up to Formula 2 this year. So,
I was going to say, I saw.
In Formula 3, he could only win on a Sunday from reverse grid pole. So he'd come 8th in the first race so that he could then start on pole and win on the second one. And he was like, you can win on the Saturday, Giuliano. And he's like, maybe. But Formula 3 was starting to make, GP3 as it was this year, but Formula 3 next year, used to make me giggle because between him and Piquet's son, it was like dads and their sons like aggressively pushing their children onto the podium, being like, "No, you're the better son. You're the better child." So yeah, it did make me giggle. All they needed was Pietro Fittipaldi back in, so then Emerson can pop along, and then you've got like proper grandpas with the colostomies.
I heard a theory quite recently, which you might find interesting, which was that talent skips generations and things reverse, right? And there's some truth to it, because who would have thought Jos Verstappen's son would beat anybody out of the Senna family? but there you go. Like, Bruno Senna, no. We see you, Bruno Senna, and no one's impressed.
That does make me giggle. Yeah, no, agree with that. Because I don't think actually any of the Fittipaldis that are currently out there at the moment are very good. But, yeah, it kind of makes you... Oh, okay.
It's going to rain, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I'm trying to see if there's...
It won't let... No, I don't want to add a stint. Remove it. Why won't you let me remove a stint? It's like insistent that I must stop twice. Stop it.
I'm hoping that I can make my... I'm going from ultras for 5 laps, which is longer than I wanted to be on them, to softs between laps 5 and 17, but I'm hoping I can extend that out by like 3 laps, and then I can switch straight onto inters, hopefully.
Cool.
Because at the moment I'd be pitting lap 17 and then like 3-4 laps later pitting again for inters, and that feels really stupid. But it would be even more exacerbated if I had tyres the other way round, because I pit on lap 4 from ultras to supers, and then I pit again like lap 15, and then I pit again lap 20. So I don't know. I just don't know. But if I can get an extra lap out of each of my tyres, then I might just be able to stretch it. Stretch it real good.
Bow, 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 bow.
What are you doing?
I don't actually know. Hang on. I'm freaking out. I seem to have... It kind of says that works, but I'm not sure. I'm going to have a general freak out, I think. Oh, do you know what? No, that works for me. Right, I'm going to do... when did you say lap 5 you was going to pit?
Yeah.
I might do lap 4 onto the softs and then just try and keep them going as long as possible. But if I do pit, it will be another set of softs. I trust nothing.
No, trust no one. All right, let's
mosey on in.
Yeah, let's mosey on in and see if we see how badly we fuck it up this time.
Careful.
Forgot it wasn't a race start there. Dropped the clutch immediately. Nearly went straight into the back of Hulkenberg.
Boom, motherfuckers. Yeah.
Surprise, motherfucker. Right, there was something I did want to talk about actually, which is that once again Toto Wolff, we're not in Kansas anymore, Toto, has been making noise in the direction of 3-car teams, and Autosport did quite an interesting article on the pluses and minuses, which I think did a pretty good job of outlining most of them. For me, the negatives still outweigh the pluses, although I do concede the argument that, well, wouldn't it be good to have, 3 cars capable of winning instead of 2 or 6, ideally? And, wouldn't a line-up at Ferrari of Vettel, Raikkonen and Leclerc be an interesting dynamic? And it's like, well, yes, it would be, but, it's not. So, I'm no fan of 3-car teams. I think it just makes F1 even more an exclusive rich outfits sport. You know, you're basically adding the operational costs to smaller teams of another 50%.
Yeah.
Because you need the race mechanics and engineers for another car. You need to produce another car. It's just... I'm sure it's great if you're someone like Mercedes with very deep pockets and no intention to leave very soon. Although if I was Toto, I'd be giving the side eye a little bit to the Mercedes board before I start suggesting that the sport becomes even more expensive, because they're entering Formula E very soon, and I think they'll eventually abandon Formula 1 for Formula E.
Yep, because they've got their maximum exposure out of it. The only thing I can think of is for Mercedes and so on is that like the only thing that they can get out of this now is nearly into the back of you there. Sorry. The promotional activity of having all 3 Mercedes drivers on the podium. That's a very top tier exclusivity thing, as you were saying. And then outside of that, yes, it would be amazing to have 10 teams with 3 cars and a 30-car grid, but I don't know. And it's funny you should say that, because Formula 3, where they've merged the European Formula 3 and GP3 together to make the new Formula 3, that's 10 teams with 3 cars, and I'd be very interested to see how that kind of all comes together.
But it's so much cheaper for them.
It is.
Oh, I bogged down very badly, didn't I?
Grosjean spanked me.
Roman.
Oh,
so French. Whoa! What happened to you there?
Got smacked by whoever that was in front of me. I think it was a Renault. I've got a damaged front wing as well. Minor damage.
Box this lap.
Oh, not you as well.
Softs. I mean, the car actually doesn't handle too terribly. Oh, it does in fast corners. No, Jeff. Whatever strategy you're offering me, it's wrong, because I'm coming in already. Confirm change.
That was a bad start, but don't overreact. We can salvage this.
Soft tyres. Well, I'm keeping some semblance of pace with Gasly, but it's a long lap to go round with no wing. But the thing is, like, your rear, like, swung out, and that can't have been the car in front, surely.
I hit him, and then it kind of just went meh.
There are some weird physics in this game, though. I noticed when I was putting my Instagram videos together that if you slow down, like, frame by frame, the you didn't stop.
No, because you are.
We could have double boxed.
I shall have Sorokin, and then I'll pit next lap round.
And the car kind of rotates like it's on a lazy Susan. Like, the steering input has nothing to do with the direction the car's facing. And I was like, Codemasters, that's really bad.
There is some weird stuff in this game.
Well, this has totally ruined my plan to make these tyres last until the rain.
I never said rain arrives. Never mind.
Anyway, yeah, 3-car grids. I'm not a believer in the concept, although I do recognise that there are certain advantages to considering it and to implementing it. Like, it's not that I'm totally blind to the benefits it could potentially offer. I just think it's going to make the situation with independent teams even worse. It's going to extend the domination of teams that are already dominant.
Yep.
It just ruins the Constructors' Championship. a DNF affecting 50% of your points earning capacity, I think makes for a more interesting season. That said, I just convinced myself of something, and the implications are terrifying, right? So, Hamilton goes on to win 7 World Championships.
Right.
Mercedes stay in the sport until the regulation changes in 2021, and then having established themselves in Formula E, and Formula E seemingly being the cool place to be right now, and probably in the foreseeable future, what do you reckon the chances are that that's where Hamilton goes after he retires from Formula 1? To the Mercedes Formula E team. I've just convinced myself that it could entirely happen.
That is a really interesting prospect, and one that hadn't even crossed my mind, and now makes me slightly concerned for all of humanity.
Because, I mean, it strikes me as odd, not saying that Mercedes can't afford it, but for them to run parallel Formula E and Formula 1 projects with Toto Wolff being team principal of both, I think that's a lot to demand. And it makes me think that this is the beginning of their F1 exit strategy. That they'll go out on a high. I mean, Eddie Jordan's been saying for a long time that they're gearing up to exit, and part of me thinks that the only reason they're still here is because they wanted to spite him and because they were winning. But I think as soon as their dominance comes under serious threat, I could see them pulling out to focus on Formula E, and they'll just say, well, Formula 1's not relevant to our business anymore. And if Formula E really does become as cool as it looks like it's becoming, and let's be honest, it's becoming very attractive to drivers and to manufacturers, and the money's starting to flow into it now. I definitely could see electric Silver Arrow piloted by Lewis Hamilton. I mean, the idea terrifies me, but I could definitely see it.
I think for me, seeing whether or not he would be in it or not would be very much down to how committed he is to all of this. Oh yeah, we should have all of these extra cars, blah 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 blah, all running closely, and yeah, I really do enjoy that fight, because it's less so now that we've got the Gen 2 cars, but there is an element of lotteryness to Formula E, less and less each year, but yeah, I'd be super interested to see if that would be something that he would then genuinely enjoy the fight back in the midfield again.
See, the thing is, like, controversial opinion incoming, but I'm starting to feel that a win in Formula E carries more credibility than a win in Formula 1. And I also find myself trusting Formula E far more than Formula 1 to keep the competition open. They've already been talking about exactly what you've just said, which is fears that the Gen 2 cars and the influx of manufacturers is going to create dominant teams. And the CEO of the company that runs Formula E has said that they're already looking into what they can do to help keep that under control. And I believe him, because he hasn't given me reason not to. They haven't really taken many wrong steps, to be honest. I mean, they've had some initiatives that were implemented cack-handedly, but the initiatives themselves were never truly reprehensible. And I do find myself considering the possibility very realistically that they'll just keep tighter hold on the regulations for a while longer in order to avoid this. I mean, they've achieved one thing very well, which is plurality there we go, got there in the end, of technology, in that all these manufacturers and teams are developing these very advanced electric powertrains, but no two are alike.
Yeah.
But they're all able to compete with each other. Like, I think that's freaking fantastic. You know, like, some cars have 2 engines even, and some have only 1 gear, and some have 3 gears, and some have 7 gears, and yet they're all able to race on a fairly tight pace. Now, I'll be honest, I have to confess, as much as I was hyped for it, I haven't yet had chance to see the Formula E opener, but I'd be interested for your insights, specifically on this, actually. That how close was the field? Did you feel that the new cars are conducive to good racing?
New cars are conducive to good racing. It was a bit stilted, this race, I think, and I don't think it's a true reflection of like where everyone is in the pecking order, because basically it pissed of rain all the way through practice in the middle of the desert. And so practice was rained off, and there wasn't any because it just pissed it down. And so everyone was coming in with lots of weird penalties everywhere, and just generally a mishmash of a grid. I mean, you know it's weird when Van Dorn is fastest in practice.
Yeah. In an independent car as well.
Yeah, which is awesome that it can be, but you're just kind of thinking, okay, where does this all end up? He was fourth on the grid as well, actually, to be fair. In terms of the racing and how the cars looked, I thought they looked phenomenal. You could visibly see that they were pushing much more because it's less about being efficient. It was more about speed because of the fact that you've got no car swap. The races are slightly shorter now, and that kind of stuff. So it looked visually much more like a spectacle. You couldn't necessarily visually understand all of the technical details that have changed, though, because obviously it's the internal gubbins rather than the external side of stuff. So I would be I'm ignorant to knowing kind of what the ins and outs are, but I would be much more intrigued to find out, having enjoyed a good race with some good overtaking round a track that did not look suitable for it at all. But yeah, it was a thoroughly enjoyable experience. The attack mode, I think, will need to be looked at a little bit. It seemed slightly overpowered, but because everyone gets it, I'm not so sure if being overpowered is a problem or not. And I guess this would change from track to track, because it doesn't really matter if you're overpowered with 50 more kilojoules of power around Monaco, because you're going to get stuck behind someone with a fat ass anyway. So yeah, it's super intriguing, but I just found it really, really interesting and fascinating to watch. The one thing I didn't like about attack mode was the whole thing where you had to go offline to activate it, because they put it at a purposely awkward point where you'd have to kind of slow down a little bit to pull off the track to then drive in the grid zone to activate it, and that looked slightly clumsy from the outsiders looking in, but not necessarily like a terrible deal breaker. And Jose Maria Lopez missed it twice, and I found that really funny.
While we're on the topic, actually, because I do want to give you some feedback on what you've just said.
Yeah, sorry,
it's very interesting to hear your take. No, it's very interesting to hear your take on it. I had to say, from what I've seen of the Gen 2 cars, they are definitely faster and more fun to watch. And as an avid Formula E fan, actually, I have to say that my biggest hope was that the overtaking that we saw with the Gen 1 cars was maintained, because I always thought the sport actually was quite good at having the cars genuinely fight each other, even though they were restricted on battery power and tyres. Another quick interjection is that this year you are definitely coming to the Berlin E-Prix with me. I'm not taking no for an answer. We've been saying this for 3 years. You're coming.
Okay.
It's like 20 quid on EasyJet to fly over. You can stay at my place for free, and we'll just go. The tickets are like €5. We have no excuse not to do it, and we can do a live stream from the race maybe. But I have to say I'm encouraged by what you've said. I mean, I agree that based on what I've heard so far, it's definitely not going to be a true reflection on the season, because the drivers didn't get enough practice to qualify properly. So qualifying was changed, and then that affects their ability to race really on the limit. I've been encouraged by what I saw of testing, because it does look like the cars can be pushed so much more, and they're definitely visually it's visually clear that they're faster.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that was missing. Although I did enjoy the last E-Prix I saw, I still felt it was definitely time to implement the new car. And I saw Nico Rosberg demonstrate it, and you could tell that there was so much more potential in that car than what we'd seen in the race cars. I don't know. I'm excited to watch the race back now. I always think wet races they come with benefits and drawbacks in that you don't necessarily see everyone at their fastest, but you do see some interesting race outcomes and behaviour.
The race itself is dry, but it's just everything leading up to it was soggy and confused. And also as well, I guess the only kind of other thing was because it's all done on one day and you've got lots of issues and stuff around weather, was that the race and the result and qualifying and everything is heavily steered towards people who just didn't have a penalty and played it safe engineer-wise, because there was a massive bump on the track, and essentially like half the field get penalties because when you go over the bump there's like a power spike, because obviously the wheels are off the ground and therefore turning faster. So unfortunate, and it does play into the result, but it also just kind of, it's a symptom of having a one-day event, but I don't really see what else you could have done. It's just an awkward set of circumstances.
To be honest though, I kind of like that, right? Because I think the fact that that's happening, that, you know, the car's lifting up, there's a huge surge in power and it's causing problems that have to be mitigated by the driver as far as is reasonable. First of all, it shows that the drivers have to have some skill, but also it demonstrates the power of the electric powertrain, which people who don't really watch Formula E have always been dubious of anyway.
Yeah.
But the fact that the car can throw you quite spectacularly, I think always surprises people. I remember seeing the footage from Jean-Eric Vergne winning the championship and pulling all his donuts, and there was like shocked comments that the car could pull donuts, and I was thinking, well, clearly you've not been paying attention to advancements in electric vehicles, because you know, these things have so much torque and such mind-bending acceleration that they are very watchable. And I think electric racing is, as long as the aero's okay, they are definitely capable of producing some excellent racing, just because your overtaking ability really comes down to your braking and acceleration rather than your top speed ultimately.
Yeah.
The interesting overtakes, the inter-corner ones. And it's so much more dramatic seeing these cars on corner exits sometimes, as long as that the circuit is conducive to showing what happens when the power's put down.
Absolutely. I think as well, because they aren't aerodynamically geared, I can't say the sentence, but like geared towards it being an aerodynamic car as opposed to it being like a mechanical car, if that makes sense. Hartley, you're cruel, but I'm through. That also helps as well, because like if you've got half a front wing hanging off, it's not going to be the end of the world.
I did notice that actually in the first few seasons, that they could lose quite a lot of the aerostructure and still drive very competently. Yeah. And you know, you can tell it is a much more mechanical formula immediately. It actually ties into something else I wanted to talk about, actually. If you don't mind me derailing our Formula E discussion.
Of course.
Back onto Formula One. Was it James Allison? No, it wasn't. It was the tech guy at Mercedes. Who is that now?
Ooh.
Or is it James Allison?
I thought it was still James Allison.
Yeah, it is. Sorry, I keep thinking of him at Ferrari, but he left Ferrari. He was giving an interview just a few days ago, and he was asked what he thinks the solution is to Formula One's constant aero problems. And he said he'd like to see the reintroduction of the fan car. And as soon as he said it, I realised I actually think that's a genius idea.
Okay.
Like make the fan car the standard. Because we never saw the potential of the fan car in racing, really, because it raced for one race, was dominant, and got banned. and we've never really revisited the concept, right?
Yeah.
But he made a very good point that if the car's sucking itself down onto the track, then disrupted airflow doesn't affect as anywhere near as badly its ability to follow the car in front. The car still has traction and grip, so it can put the power down, and the cars can actually race each other.
That kind of makes utter sense.
It does, doesn't it? And I found myself like face palming, thinking, in all the years we've been doing this show, for example, why have we never ever discussed that as a possible solution?
That is interesting. Oh, Hamilton in the pits. Lol.
Yeah, Hamilton in the pits from like 10th. He must have had an incident. Verstappen's 14th as well. I think everyone's just in weird pit strategies though.
Oh,
I haven't yet overheated my tyres, but I'm on the cusp of it. And you are way faster than me because I'm trying to... Well, you're way faster than me anyway, actually, it seems. But I'm flattering myself that I'm trying to take care of my tyres.
I will probably need to take care of my tyres. Remember, you've done more than I have.
What's your percentages look like?
I will find out in a smidgeroo. 34% on the tyres, but I'm 105 on temperatures. Ooh, that was nifty.
I'm 103 Celsius on the temperatures, and 35 on the front right, 41 on the front left now, 28 and 29 on the rears. But I think these tyres might just last till the rain starts.
I think they will as well.
I hope. It is interesting though, I don't know if it's just the track or if it's how I'm driving it, but the disparity between the rear right and the front left is massive.
Same.
I'm not going to fight you. Just go through, sir. I know that's not conducive to a good podcast, but I don't want us to have a massive accident.
Thank you very much. Too kind.
My aim for this Grand Prix, given that we both knew we were going to be slow here and have tyre problems, is that we just both finish, because this will be the first Grand Prix of the year.
Yeah.
We still haven't done one where we both finished, because you crashed last week as well.
Yeah.
We are at least equal on DNFs, though.
Something we are equal on.
We've both crashed the same number of times, and we've both won the same number of times. So really the points difference between us is because I got a better midfield finish at some point. Yeah, you're already 1.7 seconds clear of me. Boy's got pace.
Only for a minute or two.
That was a nice move on Verstappen. I quite liked that. Oh, and you passed Hulkenberg already as well.
I think I scared
Look
him.
at you. It's kind of hard to talk now. I'm trying to race Verstappen.
It is.
I am faster than him though.
It's because I've got Gasly up ahead having a bit of a mare. There's something...
Oh, I'll tell you what we normally do at Christmas that we haven't done yet.
Get drunk. Oh.
Yeah, well, get drunk, of course, but also, when we're not getting drunk, it's the
rain.
Reviews of merchandise.
Ooh, I have some merchandise from retrogp.com.
I saw. Please talk us through it. How is it?
It is amazing. So, because I wore it on my team day at work. Here's the rain, nice. So, yeah, I bought myself from Retro GP, and note to everyone that does want to do it: if you put it all into your shopping cart and then don't buy it, they send you a 5% off gift token voucher to use.
Nice.
So
useful consumer advice there.
Exactly. How is Van Dorn in 5th?
I don't know. It's a very messed up race.
Oh, it wants me on
Gasly, you're
inters.
ruining my race. Confirm change.
Are you entering as well?
Apparently so, according to Jeff. I might do an extra lap though, because the tyres still feel good. Oh no, all the AI are all in.
Okay, so... No, I'm okay.
I'm losing a bit of time double boxing with you, but I think it's the right thing to do.
It is. Because they're all struggling. How's Van Dorn in 5th? What alternative world is this?
Oh, the Renaults have lost out massively. They've come out at the back. Verstappen got past me again because he was able to pit faster. I got held a little bit for incoming traffic, but I've come out in the points at least, which is better than I dared dream.
We're also down to 17 runners. Somewhere in all of that. But no one's showing us retired on the... Oh, this is awful.
This rain turned up very quickly, didn't it?
It did.
Fortunately, I'm quite cheeky in the wet, so I'm coming for you, Max Verstappen. I've got past you once, I shall get past you again.
You'll come for me.
But I mean, how is the quality? Is it just like a screen printed T-shirt?
No, proper quality. So, it's nice and embedded in. It feels soft as well. I really like the fact that on the Minardi one that I've got, so it's a 1989 Minardi of Pierluigi Martini is the one that I went for. Although they do have De Cesaris, I think, is the other driver that you can have as well. Even though I think if it was 89, it should be Louis Parasala, but maybe it's just Martini that they had. But either way, I was like, oh, I'll have that. But no, it's nicely imprinted on, really professional. It's been through the wash, came out perfectly fine, as has my Real T-shirt as well.
Nice.
So the Real T-shirt looks garish, but then a ginormous yellow Real all over a really bright sky blue back T-shirt probably was only going to be anything but that. So yeah, it's I'm really pleased with it actually. And what I'll be doing, so in the new when I've got Dosh, I plan to get the I think it's the 98 Jordan merch that they've got. Bitten and Hisses. It's not the Snake, which was 97 if I remember rightly. It's the Hornets.
That's right.
Yeah. So that's going to be my next purchases. They also have some LaRousse stuff on there, which is, LaRousse was just every colour under the sun.
Yeah.
So I can't wait to have my 1990s tie-dye retro feel with that once that's on.
Do you know, if I think about any of the teams we've lost over the years, LaRousse is the one whose bankruptcy made no sense to me. Well,
actually, funnily enough, keeping us on our retro tin, so I follow Unraced F1 on Facebook. They're difficult to actually read some of their articles because the gentleman that writes them is not English as a first language, so it makes it quite difficult to... You have to kind of read some of the pidgin English of it. But he puts a page on every year currently. I think he's done everything from the 90s onwards of every project that was supposed to be in F1 but didn't actually turn. So like the Dome F1 project that Honda were doing in the 90s and stuff like that. And it detailed just how many times Gerard LaRouche tried to get that team back on the grid in 1995, even though no one believed him. And they've got like cutouts of newspaper articles of him going, "We'll be back for Imola. I've got Eric Comas and Jean-Christophe Boucher as my drivers." And then they're like, "What sponsors do you have?" And he's like, "We'll be on the grid in Imola." It's really funny if you read the article. And it's just, even like the newspapers like, there is no evidence of any money. And it's like, that's the end of the article. And I was like, oh, soz. Because that was all that the French...
good, though.
Yeah. That was because the French government refused to put any more money in. Which is then really funny, because then the same website... Oh, shit, I've got a 3-second penalty. We're back to those days.
What did you do?
I've been cutting corners.
Oh, you're a bad man.
Typical Smithy. But yeah, so it was really funny, because then Prost was going to actually come in with his own Grand Prix team before he bought over Ligier, because the French government basically pulled all the money out of Larousse to go and give it to Alain Prost and say, can you run an F1 team for us, please? And I found that really interesting. I didn't know that was even a thing.
I can see why they did it, because as an ambassador for France, you know, the professor, he had a lot more credibility than Larousse.
Oh, yeah.
And I do find it funny that you basically had a state-sponsored F1 team when the French government was still that way inclined for many, many years, because, you know, Ligier also got state backing.
Yeah.
And Renault is part owned by the French government, still to this day, I believe.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, but also, like, Prost folding never made any sense to me. I mean, I know their fortunes went down quite drastically, but I mean, the team had no debt really when it went under.
No,
you know, he'd always paid his bills on time. Like, and I know, like, the French government and the tobacco sponsorship both being dropped hit them really hard, but
I feel like that was a cheap way out, so that no one became liable for anything, so that he could then squiddle his nose in at Renault, perhaps. And it was a bit of a victim of circumstance, and almost like the prestige of having Prost as the name. Because, God, I've been talking of more Facebook groups that I love. F1 Tests is such a good group. And they was recently posting out some of the stuff of people driving in the late 90s for and then early 2000s for Prost. And God, that blew.
I know, it was beautiful, wasn't it? I see, I kind of want some Ligier merchandise. That's why I'm so interested in your retro merchandise.
So they do have Ligier, but it's from the 70s, and it's the wrong blue.
Yeah, yeah, it's the wrong blue, isn't it? And
yeah.
I saw that Arrow stuff is all from, like, the 80s, you know, the Warsteiner
yeah.
arrows, and, you know, not the orange arrows, but I imagine there's probably very good reasons why they haven't.
Is Warsteiner still a thing that's going, by the way?
Yeah, I drink Warsteiner occasionally.
Oh, you good man. It's just, it's funny enough, I was having a conversation with some people about when F1 used to be on Eurosport, because that was when I was at school, and I used to come home for lunch hour and then arrive late in the afternoon, because I'd come home for the practice sessions on Eurosport, and it would quite often be sponsored by, and then you'd have this mercurial, like, German man would be like, Warsteiner! You'd be like, ooh, sounds like a death metal band that I've yet to hear.
Yeah, and then you had, like, early polygonal 3D stuff, right? Like,
yeah.
For Goodyear tyres and
Coca-Cola. Yeah. Yeah.
But, you know, I do have to say, actually, I quite enjoyed Eurosport's coverage.
Oh, yeah.
What I found is the BBC was superior for the race. Mm-hmm. For qualifying, I could tolerate either, and practice sessions, it was all Eurosport, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, but sorry, go on.
I was going to say my dream duo commentators, and it's why I used to love A1GP, was Ben Edwards and John Watson, because John Watson was so forward-spoken and angry at everything, and Ben Edwards was just trying to not laugh his way through the rest of the broadcast.
Well, I mean, I know I did enjoy John Watson's commentary, and, like, that totally chilled Dutch guy that he did the commentary with had the same effect.
Allard Kauf, was it?
It could have been, because for a while when he was doing Eurosport, he was commentating with a Dutch guy. I recall. Yeah. But I found their coverage really good, because I think they went into a bit more technical detail than the BBC did. I mean, I know Murray Walker liked to talk about power units and and tyre compounds, but all he was doing really was making sure you knew which each car was running, which I did appreciate, but I found that Eurosport's coverage actually went into a bit more detail in that regard. Although for me, Murray is still all-time #1 bad boy.
Oh yeah,
you can't beat Murray.
No, Murray and Martin are probably... Sorry, yeah, I should clarify myself. Murray and Martin are my duo, but if they're not about, then it was Ben Edwards and John Watson. And then when they used to do the Sunday warm-up sessions, and there's some of these still kicking about on the YouTube channel that we both love that keeps changing its name because it keeps getting taken down. And they used to have on the warm-up sessions, they'd have like a special guest come along, and it'd be like there's one where they're at Monaco and they've got someone along, and it's the person that looks after the champagne sponsorship for F1 and how they get the champagnes on the podiums and stuff like that. And I was like, God, that's the kind of stuff that you just don't get that as like part of any kind of commentary stuff. Or if it is, it's because it's got to be like proper Top Gear bromance style stuff. And it was just interesting to hear like random bits of like inside F1 and the inner workings of it. And it's something I think they might have picked up on Liberty a little bit, because there was recently a few, probably about 6 weeks ago, there was a big what would you like to see as part of your F1 subscription to F1 TV to get you to join. And a lot of that kind of stuff was picked up as part of that quiz. So we'll see. Stop trying to make me pick.
Yeah, he's trying to make me pit too. I'm trying to figure out though if we're getting onto wet territory or not.
No, they've all pitted and come back out on inters, the AI.
They have pitted again?
They've all pitted and they've come back out on inters. I think it's because the inters are going to go over 70% before we get to the finish. So it's up to you if you think you can make it. I'm not going to be able to make it. I will have to pit.
No, so will I, but the game said at the start of the race that we were going to expect to finish on heavy rain. And so it seems to me like we'll change to full wets at some point.
Yeah.
Let's see what Jeff says. Let's go to Jeff at the desk.
That's what I was trying to get him to do, but he doesn't seem to want to play with me today.
Hold on. Tyre status. Tyre status.
Weather report.
The radar suggests that this heavy rain will be with us for a while now. Inters look like the best tyre for now.
It just says heavy rain. Heavy rain will be with us for a while now. Inters are the best tyre. I'm quite tempted. No, I'm not tempted enough to get round. I'm going to stay out as long as possible.
Because it feels like it might change, doesn't it?
Yeah. Because he's saying heavy rain, not light rain. And for me, heavy rain equals wets, not inters.
The thing is, there's a lot more overlap in this game than there is in others. I found when I was doing career mode that I could match cars on inters on full wets when the conditions still hadn't changed over fully yet. Problem is, like, it wouldn't be so bad if I was still running 15th, because then I'd risk it for the proverbial biscuit. But now there's actually points at stake.
And I've got an outside
stake. I just realised that we didn't actually talk about merchandise. No. So let me dive into that. There's first of all, sales. All the teams are having big sales right now, although the one that's offering the best discounts really is Williams, because they have realised that the fact that they're not a Martini back team anymore has rendered all their merchandise essentially worthless for next year. So they're doing 50% off right now, but cool. The Red Bull shop also has a sale. In terms of naming and shaming, I've actually bought a lot of merchandise this year. I've spent a lot. McLaren are still very competent on price, but I felt the quality of their performance race shirts, not the other stuff, actually has gone down. The material's very, very thin and the cut's weird.
Okay.
But the price was within normal boundaries. The Red Bull shop's a little expensive, but for me, the Toro Rosso shirt I've got, the performance shirt with the zip up front, that is the best piece of merchandise I've bought this year. The print is super solid. It's gone through the wash tons of times and not a crack or a flake is on it.
Okay.
They deliver super quickly with free shipping on most orders, actually. All things considered, that would be my recommendation. I also think the blue and silver looks really, really good. On the shame pile, I'm going to put, first of all, Sauber, just on price and shipping costs alone. Because obviously Switzerland isn't in the EU, and Sauber haven't outsourced their, even though when they've been partnering with Kappa now, and Kappa is an Italian firm, they haven't outsourced their merchandise manufacture and sales to Italy to bring it into the EU. So my Sauber polo shirt cost about £100. Now the polo shirt is very high quality, but the print on the Sauber shirt isn't great. Although the Alfa Romeo logo on the stomach is woven in, that's actually stitched.
Oh, okay.
But I found the colour, the red, that fades very quickly actually, and I'm hoping they've already kicked that item out of their shop. Because they actually released new polo shirts mid-season that didn't go on the market to customers, but the team were wearing them and they looked much better.
Right.
So I'm hoping that this was like an intermediary solution and that next year's stuff is better. The other one I want to shame is Renault.
Oh no.
Now, I actually really wanted to buy a Renault shirt for my career mode where I have moved to Renault. The yellow polo shirt has sold out.
Dang it.
So you're left with the majority black or the majority white. Basically, at this point now, only the majority white is available in my size, and I think that's the worst of them.
Yeah.
But they haven't really reduced their prices to any noticeable degree, and their stuff was already amongst the most expensive. And this is something I noticed with their Formula E merchandise as well before they handed their Formula E team over to their Nissan brand. Their team wearing Formula E was also amongst the most expensive, and by a long way. So boo on you. My recommendations, though, definitely if you're going for quality and price isn't so much of a factor, I'd go for Red Bull or Toro Rosso. Their stuff is very, very well made. The quality is always excellent, I find, with them. The shipping is quick. It ships from within the EU. In fact, their stuff occasionally comes from a UK warehouse, so if you're in the UK, you can probably get it quite quickly. And I think it represents the best value for money. McLaren also is very reasonably priced and ships very quickly, although I think if you're in it just for a t-shirt, like a traditional cotton t-shirt, their stuff is quite good. If you want their race team wear, the quality I thought was quite poor. The material is very, very thin. Williams has some very, very nice stuff, and it's very competitively priced right now, but the question is, how drastically will their look change next year, and will you still be happy with what you bought? And I think that's a very fair question to ask yourself. Haas continue to have a very limited range, and their performance shirts are always made out of a material that certainly causes me to sweat. So I find their shirts get grotty really, really quickly, but they are on sale, and if you like the look of the Haas team wear, then now's the time to buy, because they're still selling stuff from the season before the last one, and there is a difference between it, but it's largely the same. You may get burned next year if they really do rebrand everything black and gold with the Rich Energy tie-up, but now's the time to pick up. Force India, I have a Force India t-shirt that I thought was it was okay, but it's basically a screen printed T-shirt. It could have been better, to be honest. But I didn't buy the official polo shirt, so I think their performance team wear. When I say performance, what I mean is a material more akin to like a football shirt.
Okay.
And that's actually what the race mechanics wear. So the shirt I've got from Toro Rosso is exactly the same one that the drivers and the mechanics wear on race weekends. So it's got like a moisture wicking thing, so you don't sweat into it, and it's fine to exert yourself. Like I use it for jogging, whereas regular T-shirts are just T-shirts that have the sponsors on them, and I don't tend to buy those. The Sauber merchandise store didn't contain any performance wear at all. A little disappointing, their offering, but again, it was really expensive, and I imagine they weren't selling vast quantities. No. Who have I not covered? Oh, Ferrari and Mercedes I never really look at, but I believe Mercedes is very competitively priced, if that's your jam. Who else is on the grid that we haven't talked about? There is a team that I have forgotten. Actually, no, there isn't anymore. That's really sad. I've done them all. Yeah, so the TLDR, go Red Bull for quality, and Williams for price. That would be my recommendations.
Cool. I'll take a look at the Williams stuff, because I do like the Martini style of livery, so no, that makes sense for me. Cool, I like it.
Well, they've got they're also they've got their non-Martini branded stuff in the shop already, and I don't know if this is the look they'll keep for next year. It's the stuff where there's like diagonal lines that look wavy, but when you look in, they're made up of like Williams logos, and it's actually kind of cool. It's a good look. They're in the shop, and they are also reduced. So you know, worth the butchers. And I buy a lot of Formula 1 merchandise because I tend to buy from teams I have affection for, and I want to put a bit of money into the pot. But for bumming around the house, these things are really, 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 really comfortable. So I tend to use it for, like, you know, doing housework or going for a jog or whatever, and I kind of wear them when I don't have to care what I look like. I also use them in career mode, actually. I've been able, through my career mode streams, to wear the team wear of the team I'm driving for quite often. It's only Renault that have ruined that. Boo on you, Renault. But I want to, for the first time, go into Formula E merchandise as well.
Ooh, do tell.
Because from last season, my favourite stuff was definitely Virgin Racing and Jaguar.
Yeah.
Jaguar was a little overpriced on the race weekend, but if you bought direct from them, the prices were very, very reasonable, and it's always still cheaper than Formula 1 merchandise. Coming into the new season, I haven't seen a huge amount yet, like previewed, but I can say early out of the gate, the Virgin stuff again looks fantastic. They've put like a pattern into the purple that I think looks really, really great, so I'm excited for that to go on sale. I haven't seen if Jaguar have changed their team wear this year, but their stuff last year looked fantastic. And Nismo, the Nissan team, they've got a really smart black looking sort of technical polo shirt with a red trim, and it looks amazingly good. Really, really great. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say the BMW Andretti teamwear will be looking good as well, but I haven't seen any of that yet. Did you notice anything when you were watching the race? Did you notice any teams looking especially stylish?
Not particularly. I really, really, really do like the Neo and Jaguar just general livery. I think that looks... It's the neon blue that I love that, like, electric style, so... that kind of works for me. But no, I didn't see much of the team liveries at all, to be honest. No, I hadn't really looked at Formula E merch in general, so that's quite interesting, because I might be in the market for some, pick some up.
Formula E merchandise is... the first few seasons it was really crappy quality, but last year they finally nailed the quality problem, and the price compared to F1 merchandise is so much better. And there's some snappy dresses on the Formula E grid, for sure.
And I've always liked the Virgin liveries and the way how they look anyway. So
yeah, and this year it's even better because they've actually darkened the purple a little bit.
Yeah.
You've not had an accident, have you?
No, I nearly did on the second last corner, and that's going to cost me 6th to signs because I'm not 3 seconds in front. Shit. 7th. I should have been.
You
6th.
win this time, Gasly.
Hello, Craso.
I was way faster than Gasly, but I because I had to change my wing when I pit stopped. I lost out to him in the end, but. Well, you know, that could have been a lot worse.
I'm really pleased with myself, actually. I thought that would be nowhere near anything.
Your race pace was really good.
I overcooked the Inters massively. My last lap, I was catching Verstappen, and then I lost several seconds in that last lap because I just boiled my tyres. I should have gone slower to stay faster, if that makes sense. But no, I was pleased with that. I think good recovery from both. Also, in F1 merch that isn't necessarily apparel, I have bought Kimi Räikkönen's biography. I should be reading that at some point. That was my.
I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Christmas present
when
to
you
myself.
Read it.
Yeah. And on my Christmas list, and I imagine it will probably be got. I have asked for Mark Priestley's The Mechanic book just to see kind of what that's like, and that will go on my F1 pile of books. It's next to my bedstead that I've yet to open, including Damon Hill's book, which I started last week, and I will continue plodding through that, although it seems to be much more around his mental breakdown after retiring from racing at the moment rather than anything else. And what other book is there? The one that you recommended me,
Adrian Newey.
Yes,
his book, or the Piranha Club.
No, the Piranha Club I've not got yet, but the Adrian Newey book is in my backlog of books to read after you recommended that one.
That's really good. The Piranha Club, we're doing a bit of a Christmas gift guide here. The Piranha Club is still my favourite F1 book I've ever read. I have a reading list too, actually, that I'm going to get down to over the Christmas period. I have Total Competition, which was a collaboration between Ross Brawn and Adam Parr. That I'm looking forward to reading. I also have Mark Webber's autobiography, Jenson Button's autobiography, and oh god, what was the other one that I had delivered? Oh, it's gone. But there's plenty on my list, actually. Oh, Steve Matchett's book, By His Time as a Benetton Mechanic.
Oh, okay.
Because that came very highly recommended from a few people, and now I want to give it a bash, because obviously he was a mechanic at Benetton during a very interesting period for them, where they got accused of cheating and having traction control, and when their car blew up in the pits.
Yep.
And I want to hear all his views on that, because he's actually quite an interesting commentator, and he's been a guest on a few F1 podcasts I like that have given me a favourable impression of him.
There's one thing that's coming out in January, I believe. I think it's the end of January or start of February, and it's Ibraz Malik's book that's covering the whole of the 1994 season. I've had some chats with him just in general, because he spotted that we do like our 90s stuff, so he's aware of us, which I find quite interesting. But yeah, so he's been going around basically asking everyone about the 1994 season and things like the Benetton cheating, Senna and Ratzenberger, obviously, just the general malaise of F1's probably darkest year ever. So I'm super intrigued. His book's just gone off to be printed now, so you can do pre-orders for it. But having watched him and followed him and seen all the research that he's done, I'll be buying that book just to see all of the ins and outs of everything.
Do you know the title? I might order that right now.
1994, the story of a tragic season, I think it's called. But Ibra Malik is the gentleman's name, and I think his Twitter handle is 1994 F1 book. Yeah, fascinating.
I'm immediately interested in that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm immediately interested in that. Well, sir, quite a good race for us, all things considered, given where we thought we were going to be.
And we had front wing changes.
I had 2 front wing changes.
You had
no
2?
less. I did. I took my end plate off, overtaking Verstappen because he jutted to the side. But it's Verstappen. What more did I expect, really? What's interesting is points for Charles Leclerc, which is good, and points for Fernando Alonso. It was nearly a double points finish for McLaren because Van Dorn was still running in the points quite late in the race. Then must have pitted really late because he ended up down 17th. We had 18 classified runners, not 17, so I don't know what was going on there.
I've got 17 classified runners.
Oh no, hold on. I've just embarrassed myself. Dickhead, I was looking at the wrong screen. Yeah, Van Dorn did get points. Yeah, he did. Sorry, I was looking at the current standard. That means Charles Leclerc is 10th in the Drivers' Championship.
That is correct.
29 points. What a badass. So yeah, I'm still ahead of you just by 6 points. You've closed the gap a bit there. I think Ricciardo's slipping out of reach, but we are both ahead of Verstappen, who's having a torrid season. Vettel has had his gap closed by Raikkonen and Bottas, who've both made inroads. And in the constructors, we are 65 points behind Mercedes, which is actually a closer gap than I expected to see, given how often we failed to finish.
Exactly. This is a double finish. Woo!
Woo!
We're on it. Still 2 ahead of Red Bull as well. We might still cling on to this 3rd place yet.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Another podcast down.
Indeed. And the last one, I believe, for 2018.
Oh, yes. Yes, it is. You are correct. Wowzers, trousers.
I'm assuming we're not about between Christmas and New Year, but we'll confirm offline just in case. But if not, I take this opportunity to wish everyone, and of course yourself, a fabulous Christmas.
That's the best kind. Yeah, indeed. And a very happy New Year if we don't see you before.
Absolutely. And make sure you follow us. Where can they find you, Mr. Definitely Zero?
You can find me at twitch.tv/definitely0, and I'm going to be streaming like a mofo over Christmas to make up for the fact that I have not been online very much lately. So I'm going to be doing some career mode, I'm going to be doing some Surviving Mars.
Ooh.
And probably a little bit of Red Dead Redemption 2, which I'm very bad at. But, we'll figure it out. I'm also going to be returning to YouTube for one season of a playthrough. That'll start early next year, and I'll be doing a playthrough of Civilization 6 as Canada in the new expansion, because I'm super hyped for that. I've been receiving some emails lately. A lot of people are still asking me to do some more F1 management, to do Grand Prix World again. Now, unfortunately, I can't really do that. It's just become too technically complex to get the game running stably and not lose footage all the time, so I won't be able to do that. But I have kept intending to come back to Motorsport Manager, a game that you've stuck with far more admirably than I have. But that's not really something that I feel I'm able to do. But I will root around in the retro bin and see if I can't find something to do a few seasons on. What about you, sir? What are you going to be up to?
So I have now done 105 or 106 episodes of Motorsport Manager. Crazy. For the 10 people that keep coming back and watching it. So yeah, I will win. We're still battling for 3rd in the constructors there. Plenty of stuff on the rhythm action stuff, but one thing that I have ordered, actually, because I get quite a lot of stuff around, can you start going back to your old PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2 stuff again? Last month, and it's my own fault because I went a bit nuts for Black Friday and I'm already in my overdraft this month, but it made more sense to buy everything on Black Friday and survive my overdraft charges than just to wait and buy it at full price. So in my head, I've done a good thing. But there's this thing called made by Pound Technology, and what it does is it converts PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 outputs into HDMI, which then means that it upscales stuff onto a HDMI TV, and then I can plug that into my Games Capture stuff. So I will be ordering that after payday this month. So from mid-January, late January onwards, hopefully there'll be a shit ton of retro games returning back on, because otherwise at the moment it's me playing lots of indie stuff and going back hopefully to some more City Skylines and Jurassic Park Evolution.
Ooh, I will come. I will definitely come along for that. Definitely, I love those games.
Good fun.
All right then. Thank you to everyone who's watching on replay and anyone who joined us live. We will see you in 2019. Mwah mwah. Love you. Bye.
Bye.